Today, we unravel a significant legal development out of Georgia, a state that has found itself at the center of some of the most closely watched legal battles in recent times. The Fulton County District Attorney, Fani Willis, a name many Americans are now familiar with due to her high-profile investigation into alleged election interference in 2020, has been ordered by a judge to pay over $54,000 in attorney's fees. This ruling comes after the court found that her office violated Georgia's Open Records Act. The saga began with a public records request filed by Ashley Merchant, an attorney representing Michael Roman. For those unfamiliar, Mr. Roman is one of the 18 individuals who were indicted in August 2023 alongside the then-president on charges related to attempts to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia. Merchant, in her capacity as Roman's counsel, sought various documents from the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. These records, she argued, were crucial for her client's defense and were legally obligated to be disclosed under Georgia's transparency laws. However, according to the lawsuit Merchant filed in January 2024, the district attorney's office allegedly failed to provide these requested public records. This inaction prompted Merchant to take legal action, asserting that Willis and her office were in violation of the state's Open Records Act. This act, like similar legislation across the United States, is designed to ensure government transparency and allow the public and their representatives access to official information. It underpins the fundamental principle that in a democratic society, the workings of government should be open to scrutiny. The case landed before Fulton County Superior Court Judge Rachel Krause. After reviewing the evidence and hearing arguments from both sides, Judge Krause delivered a significant ruling. She found that the failures of the district attorney's office to comply with the Open Records Act were not mere oversights or unintentional delays. Instead, the judge concluded that these failures were intentional, not done in good faith, and were substantially groundless and vexatious. These are strong words from a member of the judiciary indicating a serious disregard for the legal obligations of a public office. As a consequence of this finding, Judge Krause ordered Fani Willis and her office to not only search for and turn over all the records that Merchant had requested but also to pay Merchant's legal team a substantial sum of $54,103.23 in attorney's fees and litigation expenses. The judge stipulated a 30-day deadline from the date of the order for both the delivery of the documents and the payment of the fees. This timeline underscores the urgency and the seriousness with which the court viewed the violation. In her order, Judge Krause did not hold back in her assessment of the district attorney's office's conduct. She noted that the office was openly hostile to Merchant and that testimony presented during the hearings indicated that Merchant's requests were handled in a markedly different manner compared to other similar requests. This differential treatment, in the judge's view, pointed to a lack of good faith on the part of the district attorney's office. One specific instance highlighted in the court's findings was the testimony of the Open Records Officer for the District Attorney's Office, Dexter Bond. Bond reportedly stated that he refused to communicate with Merchant by phone even though it was his regular practice to call requesters if a request was unclear. Judge Krause explicitly stated that treating Merchant's requests in this way indicates a lack of good faith, further cementing her conclusion about the intentional nature of the noncompliance. The types of records that Merchant sought provide an interesting glimpse into the workings of the district attorney's office, particularly in the context of the high-profile election interference investigation. Among the documents requested were reports provided to Willis's office by companies that were hired to track the impact of Willis's statements to the media and whether such statements were viewed favorably by the public, according to court filings. The timing of these contracts is also noteworthy as the filings suggest that Willis's office began engaging these companies just before seeking the indictment against the then-president, Michael Roman, and others. This raises questions about the purpose and use of taxpayer money in monitoring public perception related to an ongoing criminal investigation. Furthermore, Merchant's requests included a copy of the non-disclosure or confidentiality agreement that employees of the district attorney's office are required to sign. Such agreements are standard in many organizations to protect sensitive information, but their scope and application within a public prosecutor's office can be of public interest, especially in cases with significant public attention. Finally, Merchant also sought a comprehensive list of all attorneys that Fani Willis had hired since she took office. This request likely aimed to understand the staffing and resources allocated to the various cases handled by the district attorney's office, including the election interference case. Understanding who is being hired and at what cost is a fundamental aspect of government transparency. The reaction to Judge Krause's order was swift. Ashley Merchant herself took to social media to express her satisfaction with the ruling. On the platform X, she wrote, "Proud that we have judges willing to hold people in power accountable when they ignore the law." This public statement underscores the broader implications of the case, highlighting the importance of judicial oversight in ensuring that public officials adhere to the principles of transparency and accountability. A spokesperson for Fani Willis's office, however, indicated that they plan to appeal the order. This suggests that the legal battle over the open records request is far from over and could potentially move up through the Georgia court system. An appeal would likely involve a higher court reviewing Judge Krause's findings and legal reasoning to determine if any errors of law were made. This development in the open records dispute comes against a backdrop of other significant legal challenges and scrutiny surrounding Fani Willis's handling of the election interference case. One of the most prominent of these is the ruling by the Georgia Court of Appeals in December of last year, which found that Willis and her office could not continue to prosecute the election interference case against the then-president and others. This ruling was based on what the appeals court described as an appearance of impropriety stemming from a romantic relationship Willis had with Nathan Wade, a special prosecutor she had hired to lead the case. The relationship between Willis and Wade was first brought to public attention through a bombshell filing by Ashley Merchant in January 2024. In that filing, Merchant alleged that the romantic relationship created a conflict of interest that should disqualify Willis and her entire office from prosecuting the case. This allegation led to weeks of intense legal wrangling, including testimony from Willis and Wade about the nature and timeline of their relationship. While Judge Scott McAfee, who was presiding over the election interference case, ultimately ruled that the relationship did not constitute a disqualifying conflict of interest, he did find that Willis had shown a tremendous lapse in judgment. As a condition for Willis and her office to remain on the case, Judge McAfee required Nathan Wade to resign from his role as special prosecutor, which he subsequently did. Despite this ruling allowing Willis to continue the prosecution, the Georgia Court of Appeals later intervened, finding that the appearance of impropriety was significant enough to warrant disqualification. Willis has since asked the Georgia Supreme Court to review and reverse this appellate court ruling. As of now, the state's highest court has not yet indicated whether it will take up the case, leaving the prosecution's future in a state of uncertainty. Even if the Georgia Supreme Court were to ultimately rule in Willis's favor and allow her to continue prosecuting the election interference case, significant questions remain about the timeline and practicalities, especially given that the then-president is now the sitting president. It is widely understood that a sitting president would likely face significant legal hurdles to being prosecuted in a state-level criminal case. However, it is important to remember that there are 14 other defendants in the Georgia election interference case, including Michael Roman, who still face charges regardless of the then-president's situation. The open records lawsuit and the related $54,000 attorney's fees order add another layer of complexity and public scrutiny to Fani Willis's work as district attorney. It raises questions about the office's transparency, its interactions with defense attorneys, and its overall management. For American viewers of this podcast, this story highlights the importance of open government and the role of the judiciary in ensuring that public officials, no matter how powerful or the profile of the cases they handle, are held accountable to the law. The fact that Judge Krause found the violation to be intentional and not done in good faith is particularly significant. It suggests a deliberate obstruction of access to public information, which undermines the principles of transparency that are essential for public trust in government institutions. The order for Willis to personally ensure the search and handover of documents within 30 days underscores the court's direct assignment of responsibility to the elected district attorney. Furthermore, the appeal planned by Willis's office means that this issue will likely continue to unfold in the legal arena, potentially drawing more public attention and further shaping the narrative around the election interference case and the conduct of the Fulton County District Attorney. The intersection of these legal battles, the disqualification attempt based on the romantic relationship and the penalties for violating open records laws, creates a complex and closely watched situation in Georgia. For American viewers, this story serves as a reminder that the legal processes surrounding high-profile political cases often involve intricate layers of procedural and ethical considerations. The right to access public records is a cornerstone of a functioning democracy, allowing citizens and the press to understand the actions of their government. When these rights are allegedly violated, as Judge Krause has found in this instance, it raises serious concerns about accountability and the rule of law. The ordered payment of $54,000 in attorney's fees is not just a monetary penalty, it also serves as a tangible consequence for the district attorney's office's actions. It underscores the principle that public officials can be held financially responsible for violating the law, particularly when their actions are deemed to be without justification and in bad faith. As we continue to follow the developments in Georgia, the story of Fani Willis and the legal challenges surrounding her office offer important insights into the complexities of prosecuting politically charged cases and the ongoing debates about transparency and accountability in the American legal system. Stay tuned to American Insights for further updates on this and other significant stories shaping our nation. The crux of Judge Rachel Krause's decision rested on her finding that the district attorney's office's failure to comply with merchants' public records requests was not accidental but rather intentional, not done in good faith, and were substantially groundless and vexatious. This determination is critical because it goes beyond a simple administrative error. It suggests a deliberate attempt to obstruct the release of information that merchant was legally entitled to receive. The Georgia Open Records Act, like similar statutes in other states, is rooted in the fundamental principle of government transparency. It mandates that public agencies, including district attorneys' offices, must provide access to their records upon request, with limited exceptions to protect privacy or ongoing investigations. The burden of proof lies with the agency to justify why a record should not be disclosed. In this case, Judge Krause clearly felt that the Fulton County District Attorney's Office failed to meet that burden and, furthermore, acted in a manner that demonstrated a lack of good faith. The specific types of records requested by Ashley Merchant offer a window into the defense strategy in the election interference case and potentially into the operations of the District Attorney's Office itself. The request for reports from companies hired to track public perception of Fani Willis's statements is particularly intriguing. The timing of these contracts, allegedly initiated just before the indictments were sought, raises questions about their purpose. Were these tools used to gauge public support for the investigation? Were taxpayer funds being used to monitor media coverage in a way that could potentially influence public opinion or even the jury pool? These are questions that public scrutiny, facilitated by open records laws, aims to address. The request for the non-disclosure agreement signed by employees of the District Attorney's Office touches on the internal workings and potential constraints on information flow within the office. While such agreements are common, their specific terms and applicability in the context of a high-profile and politically sensitive case like the election interference matter could be relevant. Understanding the rules governing what employees can and cannot disclose is part of ensuring accountability and transparency within a public agency. Finally, the request for a list of all attorneys hired by Fani Willis since taking office is a basic inquiry into the staffing and resource allocation of the District Attorney's Office. In a complex and resource-intensive investigation like the election interference case, understanding who is involved and the scale of the legal team is a matter of public interest. It allows for an assessment of whether resources are being used effectively and appropriately. Judge Krause's order not only mandates the release of these documents but also imposes a significant financial penalty on the district attorney's office. The $54,103.23 in attorney's fees and litigation expenses that Willis has been ordered to pay underscores the seriousness with which the court views the violation. This is not a trivial sum, and it represents a direct cost to the public, as these fees will likely be paid from taxpayer funds unless Willis chooses to pay them personally. This financial consequence serves as a deterrent against future violations of the Open Records Act by public officials. The reaction from Ashley Merchant expressing pride in judges holding those in power accountable resonates with a broader sentiment in American society about the importance of checks and balances within the government. The judiciary plays a crucial role in ensuring that the executive branch, including law enforcement agencies like the District Attorney's Office, operates within the bounds of the law and respects the rights of individuals, including the right to access public information. The decision by Fani Willis's office to appeal Judge Krause's order sets the stage for a potentially lengthy legal battle over the open records issue. An appeal would involve a higher court reviewing the lower court's findings and legal interpretations. The appellate court would need to determine if Judge Krause correctly applied the law and if her factual findings were supported by the evidence presented during the hearings. This process could take months and further prolong the resolution of the open records dispute. It is important to contextualize this open records battle within the larger legal landscape surrounding Fani Willis and the Georgia election interference case. As we discussed in Part 1, Willis has already faced significant scrutiny regarding her romantic relationship with Nathan Wade, the special prosecutor she initially hired for the case. The Georgia Court of Appeals ruling that Willis and her office should be disqualified due to the appearance of impropriety is a major setback for the prosecution. Willis's appeal of this ruling to the Georgia Supreme Court means that the very legitimacy of her continuing to lead the election interference case is currently in question. The fact that these two significant legal challenges, the open records violation and the disqualification attempt, are unfolding simultaneously adds to the complexity and the public interest in Fani Willis's actions. Critics might argue that these issues raise broader concerns about her judgment and the management of her office. Supporters, on the other hand, might frame these as politically motivated attacks aimed at undermining the election interference prosecution. Regardless of one's perspective, the legal processes involved are crucial for understanding the checks and balances within the American system of governance. Open records laws are designed to empower citizens and the press to hold government accountable. When these laws are allegedly violated, the judiciary steps in to ensure compliance. Similarly, rules regarding conflicts of interest and ethical conduct for prosecutors are in place to ensure the integrity of the legal process and maintain public trust in the justice system. The intersection of these legal battles also highlights the intense scrutiny that high-profile political cases often attract. Every aspect of the investigation and prosecution, from the evidence gathered to the conduct of the prosecutors, is subject to intense public and legal scrutiny. This is particularly true in cases with significant political implications, such as the Georgia election interference matter. For American viewers, the story of Fani Willis and the legal challenges she faces serves as a compelling case study in the complexities of law, politics, and public accountability. It underscores the importance of transparency in government and the role of the courts in enforcing those principles. The outcome of the open records appeal and the Georgia Supreme Court's decision on the disqualification matter will have significant implications for the future of the election interference case and for the public perception of Fani Willis's leadership. Moreover, the financial penalty imposed on Willis's office for violating the Open Records Act sends a clear message that public officials will be held accountable for failing to comply with transparency laws. This is a principle that resonates across the political spectrum, as access to information is seen as a fundamental right in a democratic society. As we continue to follow this unfolding story, it is important to remember that the legal processes are designed to ensure fairness and accountability. While the political implications of the Georgia election interference case are significant, the legal battles over open records and prosecutorial conduct are crucial for upholding the integrity of the justice system itself. The fact that Judge Krause explicitly found a lack of good faith in the district attorney's office's handling of the records request is particularly troubling. It suggests a deliberate attempt to avoid transparency, which can erode public trust in the fairness and impartiality of the prosecution. In conclusion, the order for Fani Willis to pay significant attorney's fees for violating Georgia's Open Records Act is a notable development with potentially far-reaching consequences. It not only imposes a financial penalty but also raises serious questions about the transparency and conduct of the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. As this legal battle continues through the appeals process, it will undoubtedly remain a closely watched story for Americans concerned about government accountability and the integrity of the legal system.